way out to San Antonio. The White House told us that once the president is safely landed here, he will be traveling to Uvalde to Garner Field. He will be taking a helicopter out to Uvalde. We believe it's a 30-minute ride out to Uvalde, which is about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, depending on what side of San Antonio you're on. You can see there at Kelly Field, a Secret Service waiting for the president to arrive. You can see him arriving right now on the runway there. Once again, we do have live coverage this morning of the president's visit here to San Antonio, and most of the day he will be spending in Uvalde, visiting with family members of the victims of the shooting on Tuesday. He'll also be visiting with first responders as well this morning. You're taking once again a live look at Kelly Field at Joint Base San Antonio. That's out near Lackland, as President Biden is arriving here in San Antonio, visiting with the families today. Once again, he does have a full agenda. President and First Lady will be at the memorial site at Robb Elementary School. We've seen so many images of that. People from all over the state, even the country, visiting Robb Elementary this week, bringing flowers, bringing photos of loved ones to pay their respects after the tragedy that happened there on Tuesday afternoon. We know that Vice President Kamala Harris was in Buffalo, New York this weekend, visiting with family members of that tragedy that happened there recently as well. Once again, you can see the president, the Air Force One is arriving there at Kelly Field in San Antonio. We have received word that we may have some local dignitaries there to meet the president. We're still waiting to confirm that as well, but you can see Air Force One slowly arriving at Kelly Field. We do have a reporter there. We will check in with Jaleesa Irizarry shortly, as soon as the president exits the plane. And once again, you can see this is at Kelly Field near Lackland. JBSA, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are arriving here in San Antonio, where they will make their way to Uvalde. They have a full agenda of it. They will be visiting with the victims and the survivors of the tragedy on Tuesday. We are going to check in with Jaleesa Irizarry, who is there right now waiting for the president to get off his Air Force One. Jaleesa, tell us what you have seen today, what you're hearing out there at Kelly.
Good morning, Vanessa. It has been a full morning here at Kelly Field. Crews have been preparing for the president's visit all morning. We were here bright and early as well. Very eager to see the president this morning as he makes his first trip to Uvalde, Texas. Like you mentioned, once the president arrives here, he will deplane Air Force One, and then he will walk over to Marine One and take the helicopter to Garner Field in Uvalde. The president does have a full day. Obviously, it's going to be an incredibly emotional day, not only for the president, but as well as for all of the people in Uvalde hurting right now, looking for answers, looking for peace. As you can see right now, Air Force One is getting closer to its stop. All crews here are at attention, waiting for the president. To the plane. Like I said, this visit means a lot to a lot of people. Sorry, Vanessa?
You were saying that you saw many other aircrafts arrive earlier. It looks like a lot of Secret Service out there on the tarmac as well. What else are you seeing out there?
Yes, a lot of Secret Service are here. There is a lot of security surrounding the perimeter, just making sure that the president is safe. Obviously, two helicopters, one being his Marine One that he will take to Garner Field. Secret Service is starting to walk towards Air Force One right now. The stairwell is about to come into picture. And yeah, it's just been a full day of security. Vanessa, I can tell you right now, Mayor Ron Nirenberg is here. I have eyes on him. So he is not at the tarmac, but he is awaiting by some of the security vehicles ready to greet President Biden. So we do have a local leader here making sure President Biden feels welcome from this big trip.
And as we know, Jaleesa, too,
Like I said, this means a lot.
we are,
sorry, Vanessa.
San Antonio's almost 2 hours from Uvalde, but the feeling to support the Uvalde strong community right now is felt all over the state, especially for us here in San Antonio, who you know, are so close to those communities out there. And you know, we've all been out there all week visiting with those families as well, and seeing the hurt and the grieving across that community. Jaleesa, we're going to go back to you and tell us what you're seeing out there.
Yes, so the stairwells to deplane all of the individuals on Air Force One are being set up right now. Secret Service is setting up as well, making sure that everyone is safe. We are seeing some military officials walking out on the back of the plane, as well as some Secret Service officials that are deplaning the back of the plane. Obviously, this is an entire process for a big reason. Safety is of the utmost key in situations like this. It looks like there is some press deplaning as well right now. And they are bringing over the second stairwell, the stairwell in which I believe the president will be walking down. Mayor Ron Nirenberg is walking along with that stairwell. Looks like he will be greeting the president as soon as he gets off of the plane, as well as Air Force officials.
And Jaleesa, do you see any other of our local dignitaries out there today?
I truly only see Mayor Ron Nirenberg, to my knowledge.
We can see the mayor right there at the end of the stairwell, ready to greet the president and first lady when they exit the fourth line.
Yes, press is gearing up to the right of the stairwell. Marines are at attention, ready to greet President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden.
Now joining us, we are continuing our live coverage. We are at Kelly Field this morning as President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are arriving here in San Antonio at Kelly Field. They will be heading to Uvalde, where they will be visiting with victims and families, the victims' families of the tragedy that happened there on Tuesday. They will then attend a mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church before they will also meet with first responders after that, as well as meeting with the families, victims of the families, and the survivors today. We're going to go back to Jaleesa, who is live there at Kelly. Jaleesa, what are you seeing now?
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden have just gotten off of Air Force One. They are walking down the stairwell where they will be greeted by Mayor Ron Nirenberg, taking their time. Marines are at attention. Joe Biden is holding President Biden's arm. Mayor Ron Nirenberg shaking the hand of President Joe Biden, sharing some words. Shaking the hand of First Lady Jill Biden. Like we mentioned earlier, after President Biden leaves Air Force One, he plans to get onto Marine One, where he will head to Garner Field in Uvalde. President Joe Biden is speaking with Air Force officials right now, and they are starting their walk to Marine One.
Jaleesa, do we? It looks like the president is walking straight to depart to Uvalde. We were wondering if he was going to share any words before he heads out there, but it looks like he is going to get right on the chopper and head out to Uvalde. He'll be landing in Garner Field in Uvalde. The White House is telling us around 11 a.m. Looks like his schedule is close to the times that he is trying to stick to today. At 11:30, he is set to visit the memorial site at Robb Elementary School, where we've seen this week so many people stopping by to pay their respects to loved ones. Let's check in with Jaleesa. I know the president is about ready to leave. Jaleesa, what are you seeing out there?
President Biden has boarded Marine One with First Lady Jill Biden. They will be heading to Uvalde right now. Mayor Ron Nirenberg quickly left the tarmac and got into a car. My guess is he may be headed to Uvalde or he may be done for the day, but he did not join them on the helicopter. It's just President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. Obviously, they will be headed to Garner Field in Uvalde, where they have a big day ahead. Lots of events scheduled, lots of important meetings scheduled to talk to the people of Uvalde, console the people of Uvalde, and let them know that they are not alone. Press is also boarding a secondary plane, where they obviously will be going with the president, as well as he makes his visits to a local Catholic church, as well as Robb Elementary School, and meeting with the victims' families, as well as the first responders in the shooting.
And once again, we are live this morning at Kelly Field, JBSA, near Lackland, as President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are arriving here in San Antonio. They just boarded Marine One. They are headed to Garner Field in Uvalde. They are visiting with that community today and just showing their support of that community. They're also set to visit with families of the victims and survivors of the tragedy on Tuesday. We also know that President and First Lady will attend a Mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church around noon today. And after that, they will also be meeting with first responders out in that community. And it looks like, Jaleesa, are they, we know Jaleesa just shared with us as well that Mayor Ron Nirenberg met President Biden when he got off Air Force One before he boarded Marine One. Let's check in with Jaleesa. It looks like the president is about ready to leave.
Yes, absolutely. The helicopter just started up. The secondary planes that arrived ahead of Air Force One have started up with press on that plane. It's, of course, very loud, but yeah, it looks like they are gearing up to leave, and will be leaving here momentarily, where they will head to Garner Field in Uvalde and spend a full day with the people of Uvalde. Obviously, Secret Service is still here. Marines at Air Force One still standing at attention. But it's expected to be a full day here for President Biden, because he does not expect to leave out of San Antonio until much later this evening. I'm sure the people of Uvalde are very eager to see him, and we'll be seeing him shortly.
And Jaleesa just shared with us as well that Mayor Ron Nirenberg was there to meet President Biden as he got off Air Force One before he walked over to Marine One to depart to Uvalde. We are unsure if the mayor will be meeting the president in Uvalde. Jaleesa, go ahead and tell us that again. And you are watching Marine One, President.
The drive time to Uvalde is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on where you live in San Antonio. It'll be much shorter than that on Marine One.
President Biden is set to land in Uvalde around 11 o'clock.
Takes off. Secondary helicopter will follow. The three planes that came for Air Force One, with press and other officials on hand, will follow suit.
Once again, President Biden has arrived in San Antonio about 10 or 15 minutes ago. He flew in on Air Force One in Kelly Field, JBSA, near Lackland. Our reporter Jaleesa Irizarry has been there this morning and let us know that Mayor Ron Nirenberg was there meeting the president when he got off the plane. He quickly got on Marine One that you see right now that is about to take off to travel to Uvalde. He's landing at Garner Field. We have a reporter there. We'll check in with Troy in just a few minutes. But we know the president has a full day in Uvalde, coming here to pay his respects and visit with the families and the community that's just been hurting so much after the tragedy on Tuesday. We do know he's going to, once he lands in Uvalde, The President and First Lady will be traveling to Robb Elementary School and visiting the memorial site in the front of the school that we have watched many people from across the state, even across the country, stop there to pay their respects to the 19 students and the 2 teachers that were killed at Robb Elementary School by that 18-year-old gunman on Tuesday. And many people, of family members, loved ones, stopping to drop off flowers and pictures, balloons. And we'll see some shots of that shortly today. Let's check in with Jaleesa one more time while we're watching Marine One take off. Jaleesa, what are you seeing?
We are seeing Marine One as well as the secondary helicopter and the 3 airplanes carrying officials as well as press departing right now, all departing at the same time, headed to Garner Field in Uvalde.
And Jaleesa, from where you are standing, I know that
down.
You know, what was the feeling when Mayor Ron Nirenberg also met the president there? What can you tell us about that interaction? What did you see?
It was very brief. Mayor Ron Nirenberg shook the hand of President Joe Biden, shared a few words, then turned to the right, shook the hand of First Lady Jill Biden, and shared a few words. Air Force officials then stepped in and also shared a few words with Joe Biden. But there is such an extreme sense of respect on this field. As President Biden was here the entire time, you could see all officials, not just the Marines on hand, standing at attention, hands in front of them, showing respect to the president and taking this in. Obviously not a common thing to witness a presidential visit. And so I think a lot of people took it in, no matter who you are. Some of the employees here on this at Kelly Field just stood there in awe, watching as the president made his way from Air Force One to Marine One. Just a feel of respect.
Military,
and a lot of people just eager to see him get to Uvalde. Absolutely, absolutely. Military City, USA, through and through. That's really shown on days like today, Vanessa.
And we do have a reporter at Garner Field in Uvalde. Troy Kless is there. That is where the president is set to land in Marine One in a little less than 40 minutes, around 11 o'clock. He will depart there, and he is headed to Robb Elementary School, where he will pay his respects to the lives lost in the shooting on Tuesday. He will visit the memorial site that, once again, we've seen so many people stop there this week, that has grown from Tuesday when that shooting happened. People started dropping off flowers that evening. The community really hurting there and grieving the loss of the 19 students and 2 teachers. We do know that multiple people are still in the hospital. We can't confirm if they are students or teachers at this time, but we do know that one child has been released from the hospital this week. And are we ready to check in with Troy Kless at Garner Field? Okay, we'll check in with Troy in just a few minutes. Once again, you are seeing Marine One just departed from Kelly Field, JBSA near Lackland. President Biden arriving in San Antonio about 15-20 minutes ago. Landing here, we know Mayor Ron Nirenberg met the president as he got off that plane, met the president and first lady. They are headed to Uvalde right now, where they will spend the day once again visiting the memorial at Robb Elementary School, where we are hearing the president will say a few words. He is also slated to visit with the families of the victims' families and the survivors of the shooting. He will also attend a mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church there in Uvalde. And then after he's meeting with the families of victims and survivors, he will also be meeting with first responders there before he departs from Garner Field back to Kelly Field, where he will head back to Delaware this evening.
And you know, Vanessa, Uvalde is such a small town. Never in a million years did they expect to have all this attention on them. Unfortunately, under unfortunate circumstances. You see there the president will be attending Mass at noon. We know the president is Catholic. He talks a lot about his Catholic faith, and so you know he'll try and help out as much as he can, as he does in tragic situations. He also leans on his own personal stories. We know President Joe Biden has suffered tremendous loss, losing a couple of children, his late son Beau, his daughter, his first wife, and so he often leans on those personal stories to help families grieve. You have to imagine that's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And every situation is different.
Exactly.
It's impossible to put yourself in the shoes of those parents, but that's why he's headed down there. You know, we spoke with some residents last night. Sarah Duran was in Uvalde, and there's obviously going to be mixed emotions. Everyone's emotions are all over the place. Here we are days later. There's still a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of emotions. Let's go back out to Jaleesa Irizarry, who's standing by now. Jaleesa, what can you tell us now?
So the president has departed Kelly Field. He is on his way to Garner Field in Uvalde, Texas. A lot of preparations on a day like today, hours of preparations for about 30 minutes of President Biden actually physically being here, but obviously safety and security is of utmost importance in situations like this. We are seeing in the background a lot of the security breakdowns, Secret Service at ease, security forces coming through and casually walking through now. Their job is over, but now the real work begins in Uvalde, Texas. President Biden having to meet with a lot of people who, like you said, Phil, are hurting right now and needing direction, needing to vent, needing to share how they are feeling. And President Biden will be meeting with those victims' families, as well as the first responders who witnessed that shooting. So a lot planned today, but here at Kelly Field, things are clearing up. And so the president plans to depart later this evening. We're expecting that to be much later, of course, because the president is planning to visit Robb Elementary School and attend a mass at a local Catholic church there, as well as once again meeting with the victims' families privately and the first responders privately. But here today, a lot of respect here at Kelly Field. You could feel it. Everyone, even those that are not military officials, standing at attention when President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden deplaned, Mayor Ron Nirenberg shaking their hands, speaking to them very briefly, but letting them know that San Antonio is here for them, as well, of course, as the people at Uvalde, Texas. But a big day planned ahead for both the president and the first lady. Phil and Vanessa.
And we are expecting President Biden to say a few words when he does arrive at that memorial at Robb Elementary School today. And a lot of people are wondering if he's going to call for more gun legislation. That is you know, one of the topics that many are talking about right now, and people are calling on the president as well as state leaders to do the same as well.
Yeah, he has been vocal about that. The big thing he's been saying, though, it's time for Congress to act. And so, you know, look, people are still grieving, but people are angry and they want answers. And then on top of that, you have the anger and frustration coming out from that press conference this week where the DPS director admitted that the officers on scene made a terrible mistake. And so just so many emotions that the president will be you know, heading into once he arrives there on the scene in Uvalde.
Yeah, that's true. We have Troy Kless at Garner Field waiting for the president's arrival there in Uvalde. Troy, what can you tell us so far?
Hey, Vanessa, good morning. I could tell you that, you know, we're here outside of Garner Field where police and DPS and Border Patrol, many law enforcement agencies have spent the past hour or so preparing and waiting in place for President Biden and the First Lady to arrive here. Now, we'll take you around the scene real quick, and if you look behind me further towards the hangars over there, you can see that there are police and people waiting for the president's arrival. Like you just heard, he had departed from Marine One shortly ago, so we're expecting roughly an 11 a.m. Time when he's supposed to land here. So again, this is kind of what we're seeing now. Everyone's just waiting in place, waiting for the president's arrival. And now, if you could, do want to take you back over to my right-hand side. So we're off the side of the road here, and if you can look further down, there are people that are waiting for the president to arrive with American flags for the first visit by a U.S. president here to Uvalde, Texas. I was talking with some people that live down there. They live just across the street from this. They said that they've never seen anything like this, but that they wanted to pay their respects to President Biden and to thank him for coming to visit. Now, we heard from the press secretary who said that the president and the first lady believed it was important for them to show their support for this community. And at least in talking with the family down there, you can see with their American flags, they're talking with some Border Patrol agents right now, just about everything that's going on. And again, they were pretty thankful that the president is arriving here. I was actually talking with a man who says his granddaughter was actually in Robb Elementary School, but left 15 minutes prior to the shooting taking place. So you can tell just by that. We talk about Uvalde being such a small, tight-knit community and everyone knowing someone that was affected by this, and that's another example right there. So again, we're just still standing by and waiting. Again, roughly, hopefully in the next less than 30 minutes or so, we will see President Biden arrive here. Earlier today we saw the San Antonio Police Department's motorcade arrive, along with several other agencies, including, I mentioned, DPS, Uvalde Police Department, and police agencies from all over Texas are coming here to support and provide assistance in any way they can. So we're standing by, and again, we're still waiting, and it appears that people are on the tarmac here waiting for the first visit by a U.S. president here to Uvalde under such unfortunate circumstances. Vanessa, Phil?
Yeah, Troy, terrible circumstances. You've been in Uvalde all week, and obviously these are unfortunate circumstances that the president is arriving to. But talk about what Uvalde is like right now. We know it's a small town, but right now it's been completely upended. Not only do you have the president of the United States showing up, but you've got pretty much every media outlet across Texas, across the nation, from all over the world, really. You've got law enforcement from all different agencies coming to help. Talk about how that town has changed in just the last week and what it looks like throughout that small community.
Well, I think what we've seen throughout the small community over this past 5 days is, there's still a lot of grief, a lot of people processing what happened. But in talking with the gentleman I mentioned earlier, that they hope that this will make them stronger and bring them closer together as a community. And again, we talked about how, everyone who may know someone that was impacted by this tragedy, and that's why in times like this, where we're going to see a sense of unity, and also we're going to see, you mentioned the president coming here to visit. I think that was they say that they believe it's important to show their support here. And again, they're going to be, the president and the first lady, they're going to be meeting with the families of victims and survivors as well, to get a true sense of what they're going through right now. As you can imagine, processing this in so many different ways. So it's going to take a long time for this community to heal, but there's a sense that they hope, like some people feel that they hope that this can bring them together in the long run.
Over there, Garner Field Airport is about 9 minutes, a little less than 4 miles from the elementary school. Did you see any other people lining the roadways off Highway 90 on the way there? You talked about Uvalde being such a tight-knit community of 16,000 people, and now probably their population has grown so much with all the media and all the other visitors coming in. But the surrounding communities are also very close to the Uvalde community, from McKinney County to Del Rio, Valverde County to Eagle Pass. Have you seen anyone from out of town, from those other communities, coming there to support Uvalde today as the president visits?
Not at this point. We've been here since around 9 o'clock this morning, and on my way into town, you could see different signs of support, Uvalde strong, and different ribbons set along that route of Highway 90. It was pretty sporadic, but right here near Garner Field, we see again those flags that are down there, and that's the only show of support that we've seen so far. But the family down there, they put up signs saying, "Welcome President Biden, thank you for being here." So it's just a small sign of support for the president arriving here today. And I can imagine, by the school and also by the makeshift memorial, near downtown, that there's going to be plenty of people there, and there has been plenty of people there throughout this past 5 days. Vanessa?
Troy, one more question for you. I know that you've spoken with many families out there of survivors and the victims. What else are you hearing from the families? Do you feel, are many others planning to meet with the president today?
We have reached out and we're waiting to hear back. I'm not sure which family is going to be meeting with them, but I can imagine that, with 21 families and many other people impacted by the losses at Robb Elementary School, I can imagine there's going to be a lot of grief shared with the president as he's going to be meeting with those families later this afternoon after a mass that will be held at Sacred Heart Catholic Church, where we saw one that was held earlier this week and another outpouring of emotions at that point. And I think we're going to continue to see more of that today and still over the next couple of days. Vanessa?
And to touch on that, we do at least have the schedule, and we do know that the president will start meeting with survivors at 1:30, and that will go until about 5 o'clock. And so that's 3.5 hours, and that's a big chunk of time. But of course, as Troy mentioned, we're talking about 21 families. So surely he's going to be meeting with a lot of them, if not all of them. We don't know, again, which families exactly, if not all of them. But that's a lot of families to have to console and grieve. And you can see, again, that big gap there from 1:30 when he meets with the victims and survivors as well. And then at 5 o'clock, he'll meet with the first responders. We do know that Sacred Heart Catholic Church is part of the Archdiocese of San Antonio. I believe our Jeremy Baker is there now at Sacred Heart Catholic Church of Uvalde. So let's go out to Jeremy Baker. Do we have him? All right, Jeremy, what's the scene like out there so far?
Well, let me tell you, it's a lot busier than what it was before when we got here at about 7 o'clock this morning. Now, Sacred Heart Catholic Church is on the west side of town, just west of downtown, and about a mile or so west of that makeshift memorial. And President Biden is expected to get here right around noon or so, after visiting Robb Elementary, after landing at Garner Field at about 11. So he definitely, like you guys have said, has a packed day. I'll step out of the way so you can see what's going on here. Definitely a lot of activity. He's expected to come here at about noon, deliver the Mass, or take part in the Mass, and then, like you were saying, Phil, visit with those families and survivors and first responders that have been affected by this horrific tragedy. So many people in this town affected by this. We went to get something to eat after the newscast at 7 this morning, and you just look around and wonder, do they know somebody? Are they related to somebody that was affected by this? You just have to wonder in a small town like this. Now, we got into town probably at about 6:30 or so this morning, past that makeshift memorial, and it's very moving. You can see all the candles that were still lit, not a lot of activity going on, a few people standing around looking, possibly praying, possibly crying. But from there, we went down the street. It was a very quiet morning. We got to the church here, and the parking lot you're seeing right now was virtually empty. And we were kind of surprised. My photographer Hector, who's here, and myself, we saw absolutely no security when we got here. So we thought we were at the wrong place, but this in fact was the right place. And as time went on, we did see a few more cars coming in. And now, as you can see, there was a lot of activity here. Now, Phil was talking about police from all over, and as we drove through town over the past couple of hours, we saw police from towns I've never even heard of. I've been here now in the San Antonio area for close to 8.5 years, and I could probably not count on my hand the number of police cars I've seen from departments in towns that I have never even heard of. So that just shows you how the community, how the state, even the nation is rallying around Uvalde after this terrible incident last Tuesday. You can see these bulldozers here, a couple of them, one blocking an entrance to the parking lot, another actually blocking a street. We were sitting in the parking lot in our live truck up until about, I would say, 9 o'clock or so. And then finally security, that I would assume must be with the president, they were in full suits, came up to us, asked us to move along with most of the media, local, lots of national media, most of them across the street from the church now. And then they started allowing some cars in. But you can see these bulldozers, and you just have to assume that the town may have run out of barricades. I've never seen bulldozers used like that before, but it's definitely a creative way to do that. But they're definitely making sure there's a lot of security around here now. And again, the president is expected to arrive here at about noon for the mass, and then beyond that, going to go grieve with the families, honor the victims, remember the victims, and then from there, heading back to San Antonio later this afternoon, and eventually this evening, heading back to Delaware. For now, back to you guys, Phil and Vanessa in the studio.
Okay, Jeremy, thank you. You know, it's hard to think about that. 10 years ago, Joe Biden was vice president of the United States when Sandy Hook Elementary happened.
Oh, wow.
Here he is 10 years later as the commander-in-chief, and now he's responding to a different elementary school mass shooting.
And I just want to say too, Phil, because we saw Mayor Nierenberg at the airport here in San Antonio at Kelly Field, but I haven't heard word that the governor, Greg Abbott, is meeting the president anytime today. I know just last week he was talking about border issues and immigration issues and saying the president has never been to our border. And the sad fact is this is why he's here today. But we haven't received word if Governor Greg Abbott will be meeting the president today.
Yeah, I do know Congressman Tony Gonzalez said that he would be there on site to welcome the president. So we have heard from him. You're right, we have not heard yet from the governor. So we'll wait to see. You know, this is all reminiscent too of 2017, Sutherland Springs, because Sutherland Springs, like Uvalde, is a very small rural community in Texas. And I was there when Vice President Mike Pence came to visit and grieve with the families. And so it's very reminiscent. You have these small, tiny towns that never thought they would have the entire world watching them. And here we are with, then it was the Vice President of the United States arriving. And now here we are, the President of the United States arriving to your small town. All right, let's do this. Let's go back to Troy Class, who is anticipating the arrival of the President and First Lady at any moment. Troy, I understand there's been a little bit more activity since we last spoke.
Yeah, just a little bit, Phil. We had a Secret Service come check out our vehicles, and I did ask them if they had any idea of a time frame, if that has moved up for when the president and the first lady could be arriving. They said that they don't know anything right now, but again, that just speaks to obviously, the security that goes into a president visiting Uvalde, Texas here, again, for the first time. And so far, you can maybe hear a little bit of helicopter noise. I'm not sure if that's Marine One right now, but we'll see if we can get a visual at this point. And it looks like we see that actually might be it right there, or I believe that is Marine One that we see coming in at this point right now, coming in right here as the president is about to, it looks like, that looks like it could be it right there, as we are seeing for the first time. We have actually two helicopters that are coming in, so again, we'll wait to see if we can get a better visual on when the president, if he does get off one of these helicopters here. It might be a little hard to hear, but here they are coming in right now. You see a 4 on the side of that.
And Troy, you were talking about all the law enforcement that has come to Uvalde to lend their support as the president visits today. We just received a picture from a viewer of a motorcycle, looks like a motorcade that will most likely be escorting the president to the Robb Elementary today. We're seeing officers from Austin Police Department, even as down by the border, FAR Police Department, San Antonio Police Department, multiple officers there. This was from the high school taken a little bit ago as they were getting ready to no doubt meet the president and escort him today. And we're also seeing those federal and state agents out there lending their support as well.
You mentioned
And again, what you're looking at right now is Marine One landing at Garner Field in Uvalde, Texas. This is not very far at all from where this tragedy happened at Robb Elementary School. The president and the first lady left San Antonio about 40 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago. They're anticipated to arrive here at Garner Field at 11 a.m. So it's 10:45 right now. So they got there pretty quick. They're about 15 minutes ahead of schedule, more or less. And then from here, once the president gets off Marine One, they will head to go pay their respects to the lives lost at Robb Elementary School. There's been a huge memorial that just does not stop growing. And so the president will be there for about 30 minutes, according to the schedule or so, and then they'll head to Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Uvalde for a mass, a noon mass.
And it looks like these are, this is not Marine One that we're still anticipating. I know they left shortly before the president left Kelly Field today, so that means that he could arrive any moment. Troy, are you seeing anything else? Do we have Troy? I think he'll be with us.
Yeah, Vanessa, I'm still here. We're still, I know it might be a little bit hard to hear right now, but like you said, we don't believe that might just be the support that's coming in for President Biden at this point. We haven't seen any, we've seen a little bit of extra movement from law enforcement all along this road outside of the airfield here. But again, we're still waiting to see if we can get any better visual. So right now we see some Border Patrol that's walking back and forth. There's no, it looks like there are police that are waiting outside the entrance to Garner Field right now, but there's a little bit of movement. We see one officer, I'm not sure with which agency, but it looks like they're moving a little bit, just preparing once the president does get here as well. So again, we're seeing that's kind of what we're seeing right now. We can hear the engines power down from those initial 2 helicopters that came in. So there's still a little bit of movement right now, but again, we're still waiting for the arrival of Marine One. I believe that was just the support that was coming in for President Biden and First Lady Joe Biden. Vanessa?
And Troy, talk again. Have you seen the crowd grow out there? You showed us earlier there were, we don't know the residents, we assume, of Uvalde. I know you talked to some of them sitting out there with American flags, paying their respects to the president as he arrives today. Have you seen the crowd grow?
Yeah, Vanessa, we have seen it grow a little bit. People are pulling up in their cars. We also see some people down at the gas station down the road. If we're able to take a look at that real quick, and then sorry, we saw another, I don't believe that's Marine One, but we do see more people that are, coming out, pulling out along the side of the road, waiting in their cars to see if they can get any visual once Marine One does arrive. I don't think, we may get a few more support aircraft right now, but I don't believe that's Marine. We do not believe that it's Marine One at this point. We saw over on the tarmac, the officials that are waiting for the president and the first lady there haven't moved at all that much. So that might be another indicator that the president is still on his way to Uvalde at this point. So again, we've seen a little bit of movement from law enforcement who are preparing, and we also are seeing several people that are starting to line up and wait for the president's arrival. Vanessa?
And Garner Field is outside of town when you're coming down 90 from San Antonio, but we don't know exactly what route the president will take to get to Robb Elementary, but there no doubt will have to somehow go right through the heart of town. We would assume that he probably would do that past the county courthouse, where we've seen that other memorial grow to get to Robb Elementary today. So there may be many more people in town, lining the streets in town in Uvalde, waiting for the president to arrive.
Right, exactly, Vanessa. We're here off of Garner Field Road, where we see that there are, we do see an additional helicopter that's coming in for a landing right now. Again, we've seen some additional aircraft arrive beforehand, but we're going to see this next aircraft, we're going to see what's the deal there. We see, again, other law enforcement that are preparing for everyone's arrival here. And right now, again, we're just sitting here waiting to get a visual.
And Troy, you mentioned the additional law enforcement. We were sent some pictures of a group of motorcycle police officers gathered this morning at, I believe, the high school, no doubt to escort the president through town today. Are you seeing any of those escorts ready to go to escort the president to Robb Elementary?
We did see some of the escorts as they were going into Garner Field, but we haven't seen them making any movement at this point. Just based off of where I'm sitting, it looks like there's a police car that's waiting at the entrance to Garner Field that's waiting at this point, but no additional movement. Only other thing that we can see right now is cars slowing down and pulling over to the side of the road to get to look at what's happening right here. Again, this is a historic moment for this town, the first time that a U.S. president has visited, but as some people that live here were telling me, it's under the most unfortunate circumstances after what happened at Robb Elementary School last week. So again, we're seeing this second or fourth aircraft land here, and we're still waiting to see, when Marine One will be arriving here shortly. So they should be, again, we said before that it was going to be an 11 o'clock arrival.
Yeah, it looks like one of these will more likely have the president inside. Marine One looking more like a traditional helicopter, so to speak. From the sky, when we first saw that was likely the press corps traveling in those first two helicopters, and so the president is likely in one of these, as well as the first lady. But even so, again, they were expected to arrive here at about 11. So staying to that schedule, and from here they'll head over to the school, the site of that tragic shooting, where the president will pay his respects there. Then they'll move on for a noon mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church.
And Troy was just talking about as well the numbers that have descended upon Uvalde this week. A town that was 16,000 people, close-knit, small town, suddenly has grown so much. I was out there, Phil, on Tuesday, shortly after we're learning now that they took down the gunman, and there were just community members lining the streets, and that has changed so much. People from all over the world are here in Uvalde, and now President Biden is arriving in Uvalde to pay his respects today.
Yeah, no president wants to have to do this. Sadly, though, many presidents in U.S. history have had to do this. Again, it was 10 years ago when Joe Biden was vice president, when Sandy Hook Elementary had that tragedy that killed 20 kids and 6 teachers. Here we are 10 years later. He's the commander-in-chief, and now he's here in South Texas, in Uvalde, responding to this terrible tragedy. And as I was saying, this is all kind of reminiscent of 5 years ago when Sutherland Springs happened, and Vice President Mike Pence at the time had went down to Sutherland Springs, a small town, and here we have all eyes in the world looking upon your small town for these terrible unfortunate circumstances.
And just the impact on the community, Phil. We know so many people had in that community knew someone that was inside Robb Elementary on Tuesday, whether it was a child or a faculty member or a teacher in that school. So it's just, the grief has just spread through that community and through the surrounding counties as well.
Yeah, and it depends who you talk to, how they feel about today, As you heard from Troy, some people are thankful, and they have signs out there say, "Thank you, President Biden. Welcome to Uvalde." Last night, Sarah Duran spoke to a couple of people who said, "What does it matter at this point? You can't change anything," and that's absolutely true. You can't change anything, but of course, he's there to pay his respects and say what he can possibly say to help those families grieve. We know oftentimes that President Biden reflects on his own personal story of loss. He has suffered tremendous loss in his lifetime, and so he typically will share that with those family members. He still can't imagine what they're going through, but he does often share his own personal stories of tragedy at times like this.
Yeah, what a difficult day meeting with those families as well. We do know he is attending Mass at noon at Sacred Heart Catholic Church there in Uvalde. But before that, he will travel to Robb Elementary shortly, as soon as we understand, as soon as he departs or exits the Marine One, we anticipate that he may say a few words when he arrives there. He's going to visit the memorial that has grown outside of the elementary school in the last week. You know, Phil, on Tuesday afternoon, people started bringing flowers and even pictures of loved ones when they started learning of the many that died that day. And it was very heartbreaking to watch, and your heart just goes out to that community. So great that is so hurting right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then after Mass, that noon Mass, the President and the First Lady will be meeting with victims and survivors from about 1:30 to 5. So that's about 3.5 hours. It's a big chunk of time, but you can imagine there needs to be a lot of time because we're talking about 21 families. We don't know if all of them will be meeting with the President, but there's a lot of families grieving that the President will be meeting with, as well as survivors who may or may not, recount their story to the President. And then after he meets with the survivors and victims, the President and the First Lady will meet with some of the first responders before leaving Uvalde, headed back to San Antonio, and then back to Delaware.
And Phil, talking about stories, there's been so many stories that we're learning about now of the heroism of the students and the teachers. Our friends with the Uvalde Leader News had a photo of a teacher after they were evacuating children from the building, and they said that this teacher, Mrs. Deming, was the last one out of her classroom. She made sure all those students got out. We know the 2 teachers that were killed died protecting the students under their care that day.
Absolutely. There you can see the governor. Governor Greg Abbott is there to greet the President. You can see that is Marine One because you have the presidential seal there just next to the window on the right side. So there's Marine One. That's what you're looking at. There goes the Uvalde mayor, I believe, that just walked by.
That is the mayor. Don McLaughlin is there as well.
So we know we've got the Uvalde mayor there, Governor Greg Abbott there to greet the President and First Lady as they get ready to get off of Marine One here. This is at Garner Airfield in Uvalde, not very far from Robb Elementary School. Unfortunate circumstances to have the President in your small town, but again, he's here to help with the healing process and to listen to the families that have had their lives upended.
Yes. Okay, are we able to check back in with Troy? Okay,
Hey, Vanessa, I can hear y'all. Yeah, it's a pretty distant vantage point from where we are standing off the side of Garner Field Road, and as you can see, there's there's a little bit of movement from law enforcement. And again, like you just mentioned, that Governor Greg Abbott has greeted President Biden, and we are, again, like you said, it's an historic moment. The first time that the president has visited, we can actually see a couple motorcycles that are coming down the road right now. So again, just kind of clearing a path right now. Those are some DPS state troopers there that are waiting, and then we can actually see at the corner of FM 1574 and Garner Field Road, we can see people are standing by and waiting to see if we can get a glimpse.
Troy, we're going to cut you off.
Here,
we're going to cut you off for a moment. No problem. We're going to cut you off for a moment because I know you have you can't really see from where you're located. We've got a good view here. We see the President and First Lady. They've gotten off of Marine One, and now they are being greeted by our elected officials. Greg Abbott is down there. It's hard to see who he is shaking hands with at this very moment, but there's a line of elected officials and authorities there who are talking to the President right now. We live in a divided country, to say the least, and there are a lot of strong words shared between a lot of these people, but this is a moment where they can put their differences aside, at least for the moment, and come together to help this grieving community.
It just encompasses the meaning of Uvalde Strong today, Phil. We did also see the mayor of Uvalde, Don McLaughlin, is out there as well. But from what we're looking at right now, we are unsure. It's uncertain who else is there to meet the president there at Garner Field in Uvalde.
It's so hard to say. I think that second gentleman toward the back might be State Senator Roland Gutierrez. It looks like Tony Gonzalez is to the left in the lighter blue jacket. He's, of course, the congressman for Uvalde, the 23rd District of Texas. So that's Congressman Tony Gonzalez talking to the president right now. And then I believe that is State Senator Roland Gutierrez next to Tony Gonzalez, who would be next to greet the president. Of course, you can see the Uvalde mayor. Well, he just kind of walked out of frame. And then the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, is behind her husband, President Biden. So again, you're taking a live look right now at Garner Field in Uvalde. President Joe Biden arriving in Uvalde to pay his respects and to grieve and to help start the healing process with these families and survivors. Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady, right behind him.
And I don't know if we still have Troy with us. Wondering about the crowds out there right now. How are they reacting as the president has stepped off Marine One and is now in Uvalde?
Well, Vanessa, I don't think there's much of a reaction at this point. We see some people that are still standing around. I think much of that reaction might come whenever the motorcade makes its way down here. We still see plenty of people that are standing by, waiting with their phones to take pictures and everything. I mentioned earlier, we're seeing some people with American flags that are out here and are grateful that the president is here. But like you had mentioned earlier, some people felt that at this point, what's the point of him being here? Although the press secretary said before that they want to show their support for the Uvalde community going through an unthinkable tragedy right now, as we see some additional law enforcement vehicles are making their way down Garner Field Road here. Just want you to take a moment to listen and see what's going on here.
And again, you're taking a live
first wave. Oh, sorry, Phil.
No, sorry, Troy. So you're taking a live look at the President of the United States. He has just arrived in Uvalde at Garner Airfield. He's getting into a vehicle right now. After getting off of Marine One, he was greeted there by Governor Greg Abbott. We know Mayor Don McLaughlin of Uvalde was there. We know Congressman Tony Gonzalez was there, and that was indeed State Senator Roland Gutierrez, among others, there to greet President Joe Biden and the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, as they arrive here to start what will be a long but much needed day for America. A day of grieving, a day of healing. A lot of people are angry. Again, we've heard mixed reaction. Troy Kless, who's on the scene there at Garner Airfield, has said that he has seen people happy that the president is here. We've heard from some people yesterday on scene that they thought, well, what does it matter at this point? Nothing is going to change. So there's a wide variety of emotions, but it's going to be a long day. The President's Day really is just starting. He will head now to Robb Elementary to pay respects to the lives lost, and he'll see firsthand that massive memorial that just continues to grow. From there, the President will go to a noon mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church.
And this looks like the motorcade that we were speaking of earlier, someone sent us pictures from the high school that were lining up. Officers from all over the state. We've seen Austin PD, FAR PD, down near the valley, as well as San Antonio Police Department is there supporting that motorcade as well. Corpus Christi Police Department, DPS, all there to escort the president throughout Uvalde today. But next on his stops today, first on his stops is to visit the memorial at Robb Elementary School.
And needless to say, never before has the town of Uvalde ever seen anything like this, and nor do they want to ever see anything like this again, because these are unfortunate circumstances that have brought the eyes of the world upon their tiny town. This is a quiet town. Many people here from San Antonio pass through on the way to somewhere else, or maybe stop to grab a bite to eat or fill up on gas, and it's a nice quiet town. And here, literally everywhere, somebody is watching this. You've got the President of the United States in your town right now. You've got every major media outlet in your town, as well as from all over the state and other parts of the United States. Law enforcement from all over is in Uvalde trying to help out, provide resources, but again, all under unfortunate circumstances.
And that's so true, Phil. I spent a lot of time in these communities and driving through Uvalde. And I noted the other day when I was driving down there Wednesday or Thursday, just how many people were not only lining the streets or walking the streets, but gathered in the square in front of the courthouse and the downtown square, gathered at the elementary school. Just so many people from all over the state, all over the country, all over the world even, have come to Uvalde in the last week.
Yeah, and again, a full plate for President Joe Biden and the First Lady. They now are headed off to Uvalde. Vanessa, how far did you say it was from the airfield, the distance?
It's a little less than 4 miles, so probably with the traffic, maybe 10.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to have any.
Yeah,
they
won't have to deal with any traffic. So they will get to Robb Elementary pretty quick here as they head that way to pay their respects to the 21 lives lost there. And then from there, the president will attend a noon mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Sacred Heart being part of the Archdiocese of San Antonio. So our Archbishop here in San Antonio is very familiar with the church and the community there. And then after a noon mass, the president will meet with survivors and victims, the families of the victims at 1:30. He'll be meeting with survivors and families of the victims for about 3.5 hours. Then he'll meet with first responders. And then around 6 o'clock, the president will come back to Garner Airfield and depart back to San Antonio, and from San Antonio to Delaware. Certainly not the way the president wanted to spend a Sunday, because you don't want this to happen. Nobody wants this to happen. But unfortunately, we've had more than one of these mass shootings happen, and presidents have to respond. And so, you know, it was in 2017 when then Vice President Mike Pence was in Sutherland Springs coming to grieve with families. And Joe Biden was vice president 10 years ago when Sandy Hook happened, and now this.
Wow. We do want to say we're not sure of the route the president will be taking to Robb Elementary, but I assume he may be driving through downtown where so many people are gathered today. Jeremy Baker is at Sacred Heart Catholic Church right off of Main Street there in Uvalde, ahead of the Mass that the president will be attending at noon today. Jeremy, what are you seeing? What are you feeling from the community out there today?
Well, we just saw a lot of police cars come down the street here, and what I can only describe is what looks like SWAT as the president is expected to arrive here. The Mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church is expected to start right around noon, and that's likely why all these police cars have shown up from towns all over Texas. I'm seeing some from Kerr County, Crystal City, Odessa, Sweetwater, Schertz, even Huntsville near Houston, a whole bunch of smaller towns from across Texas. And it just shows you that the entire state, the entire nation really, is gathering around Uvalde and showing love, showing support, and saying, we feel what you're going through. Might not really understand fully, but we're here for you. Our hearts are here for you, and we're trying to offer you as much support as absolutely possible. We rolled into town earlier this morning, right around 6:30 or so, when it was still dark. We passed the makeshift memorial on Main Street here in Uvalde, and there was virtually no one to be seen. A couple of people looking at the memorial, the candles still lit, the street was quiet, hardly any cars on the street. We parked here in the Sacred Church parking lot, and we were pretty much the only car this morning right about 7 o'clock. We were wondering if this was the right church, if we were at the right place, because there were no security. It looked nothing like this a few hours ago. Right around 9 is when we saw the first sign of security. And when I say security, I mean those bulldozers. I've had a couple of people that I know text me asking why there are bulldozers there. Well, we're not seeing barricades, and the only reason I can come up with for these bulldozers is as barricades, because one of them is blocking an entrance to the parking lot. Another of them is blocking Fort Clark Street, which intersects Main Street, or Grove Street right here, which cuts right through the town of Uvalde. And this is just to the west of downtown Uvalde, about a mile or so west of the makeshift memorial, and to the, I would say, west-northwest of where Robb Elementary School is. where the president, I believe, should be on his way there now. And he's expected to get there at about 11:30, say a few words, and then from there move on here by motorcade to Sacred Heart Catholic Church for the Mass, which is expected to begin at noon. And you can't see it from what you're looking at through the camera. I'm not sure what shot you're showing right now on the air, but down the street you can see a lot of flashing lights from police cars down the street. They've likely blocked off the street because you're not seeing cars going through in any direction. They've stopped traffic, and you can see all these police cars and trucks and SUVs lined up, and all the what has to be SWAT here as the president is expected to get here within the hour. And along with that, we're seeing some local media that we're familiar with and a lot of national media as well. A lot of them have set up across the street from where we are to get a shot of the president, who we believe is going to be coming down the opposite direction on Fort Clark Street, which is pretty much, if you're looking straight through the camera where we're pointing at right now, it's down the road across from the church, and that's the direction we believe he may be coming from over the next, I would say, 45 minutes to close to an hour or so.
And Jeremy,
again, the president is expected to arrive. Yes.
Jeremy, we're hearing just from people in the community that there are many people out there lighting the streets, waiting for the president to arrive. How far are you away from Main Street and the Courthouse Square that you were just referring to? And what can you see from your vantage point of on Main Street, where there could be many more people waiting?
I would say from Main Street, we couldn't be more than about a third of a mile or so. From where I am, I can probably see close to that in either direction. Towards Main Street, I can't see people lining the roadways here. Where I am around the church, it's mostly media, security. There are some people waiting at the entrance of the church. I can see that, but we're probably a good few hundred feet away from the church because we had to step back from the parking lot. But right here, we can't see people lining the streets, likely because there are a lot of police cars. I would say probably about a quarter of a mile down the road. I can see those flashing lights, and it looks like they're blocking a lot of the traffic from coming through. Not sure what they're doing with the people that are lining up alongside the road. But where we are, along the side streets like Fort Clark, where we're expecting the president his motorcade to come through, we are seeing some people along the street waiting. I would say scores of people at best right here. Main Street, of course, near the makeshift memorials where a lot of people would gather, or near Robb Elementary School, because that's where he's expected to go next before coming here to the church. But right here, Vanessa and Phil, we're just seeing a lot of media, a lot of security, and a lot of these police cars as they're expecting the president to arrive here right about noon for that mass from about 12 to 1.
Jeremy, can you see from the entrance of the church, it looked earlier at least like there was a line. I imagine it's hard to get in right now because of the thorough security involved, especially with Secret Service and whatnot. But does it look like this is going to be, and I would imagine so, a standing room only mass? And do we know, it's church, you would think anyone is invited to go, but were there certain limitations given the circumstances?
From what we could tell, not sure about the limitations. It's a very small church. I can't imagine it fits more than a few hundred people at best. But when we got here earlier this morning, just before sunrise, there was no security. Nobody could tell us where to go. Nobody could tell us anything. So we couldn't find out if there were limitations, if only certain people were invited. But we do see that line of people at the church doors, at least on this side of the street, a line. Likely another one on the other side, but it's hard to tell right now from this point. But definitely, they're not just going to allow everybody in there, because even though this is a small town, Uvalde, Texas, where this horrific tragedy happened on Tuesday, not everyone's going to be allowed in the church where the president is, definitely. So it's good. I can't imagine it wouldn't be standing room only at this point. And the church here, it's bigger than the one in Sutherland Springs, that's definitely. But this really reminds me of that. I was here for that several years ago, and beforehand, you didn't see anybody, not many people around that church, hardly any buildings around. And then that horrible tragedy happened there, and the national media flocked in. So much police, so much security. And you can only imagine how this town is feeling right now. I remember in Sutherland Springs, people, you know, the best way to put it, got fed up with the media and everyone being there, and they just wanted to start healing and get back to what sense of normal that they could feel. And you just got to know that same thing is going to happen here. The media is going to leave. We're still going to be covering this, of course, because we want to keep everyone up to date with how people are doing in Uvalde. And
but the healing,
everyone you could see.
The healing, could take. We were talking to the county DA about it. Many times, years, up to years. Jeremy, we are going to step away from you, and we're seeing President Biden arriving at the memorial, I believe at Robb Elementary School right now.
You can see the president carrying a bouquet of flowers there with First Lady Dr. Jill Biden as they walk up to this memorial. You know, we had a crew at the memorial yesterday. Well, listen to that. Well, you can hear the cheers of the crowd. Let's take a listen. So what you were listening to just a moment ago was people in the background cheering as President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden arrive here at the memorial at Robb Elementary School. You see they've got a bouquet of flowers with them. Look at that memorial and how much it's grown in just a matter of days.
And I just saw a sign for Santa Fe. It looks like the Santa Fe community came out to lend their support to the Uvalde community after experiencing such a tragedy a few years ago, may have a few years ago as well.
Yeah, and we had a crew, I was going to say, we had a crew on the ground right there at the memorial yesterday, and the line to just pay your respects was amazing. It stretched blocks. And keep in mind, it was 98 degrees yesterday, and despite that heat, people waited for a long time just so they could come and pay their respects to the memorial.
And looks like, there we go, now we have our feedback. We're not sure who president is talking.
I think that might be the superintendent of the school district there. That's who that looks like. Obviously he is grieving because no superintendent wants that to ever happen to one of their schools, but that appears to be the superintendent of the school district there.
And we did hear so many cheers out there today when the president and first lady walked onto the campus. Sounds like there is a crowd there welcoming the president on such tragic circumstances to their community. I believe you can hear the cheers right now. And if you're not familiar with this area, the front of the school where the president is right now is in a residential community. There's homes surrounding right across the street. There's a crosswalk every block, so those children are walking from their homes to their school.
Yeah, and we can confirm that is Dr. Hal Harrell, the superintendent of Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District. Unimaginable tragedy that he's having to deal with. And think about what the entire school is going to have to live with for the rest of their lives, the survivors, the teachers. So you can see the president talking to him right now. As the camera was a little wider, you could see Governor Greg Abbott is there as well. But boy, look at that memorial and how much it's grown.
Wow. I know our reporter out there this week said people were just coming from all over the country to pay their respects and just really honor the 19 students and 2 teachers that died there on Tuesday. You can see the governor approaching, Governor Greg Abbott approaching President Biden right now next to the memorial in front of the school, paying their respects right now. We also see a photo right there of one of the teachers that was killed. Once again, the heroism of those teachers who died protecting their students that day.
You have to imagine, and this is the memorial in
That's at the
downtown.
yeah, that's in the middle of downtown Uvalde at the courthouse, right in front of the courthouse in the square, downtown Uvalde. That's where we've seen many people gather over the last few weeks when you really couldn't get near the elementary school at first. The media, there was so many media blocking the front. We did see a trickle of families slowly come, and that crowd grew, but so many community members also set up a memorial here in front of the courthouse to honor those victims there as well.
And again, you're taking a live look right now of President Joe Biden at the growing memorial there at Robb Elementary School. He was standing next to the superintendent, Dr. Hal Harrell. You know, we talk about the president obviously being there, but you have to imagine, you have to wonder what's going through the mind of Dr. Jill Biden. Of course, she has dedicated her life to education.
As a teacher.
And Vanessa, you used to be a teacher. No teacher ever expects to be put in a situation where you have to protect your kids from a mass shooter.
And I was speaking about that too, Phil, when I was there on Tuesday without knowing what was unfolding inside the building. But, you know, teachers experience you go through many lockdown drills a year, but you always know this is a drill. And I can't imagine the fear and the bravery those teachers, showed that day. All of those teachers keeping a strong face for those little children who just must have been terrified, and the uncertainty of what's happening outside your door. So I just can't imagine what those teachers were feeling, and our hearts just go out to those teachers and students today.
Yeah, unimaginable. Again, you're taking a live look at the growing memorial that is also downtown in Uvalde. So many people out on this Sunday morning. Those memorials just continue to get bigger and bigger. And not the usual Sunday, to say the least, in Uvalde, Texas.
And we saw the memorial grow downtown shortly after, I believe, Wednesday or Tuesday evening. It was very difficult of course, because the school is still a crime scene. So people were not able to go there and pay their respects. We saw some people dropping off flowers. The DPS troopers that were standing there, keeping people from getting near the crime scene, were taking those flowers and placing them on the memorial. That's the one you're looking at right there at Robb Elementary. We see First Lady Jill Biden really paying tribute to those victims.
Yeah,
there.
you can see
the pain in there.
You can see her touching the photos there right now of some of the victims, the 19 children whose lives were cut just way too early. And of course, Vanessa, as you mentioned, those two teachers, they will forever go down as heroes. We can only imagine how terrible that situation was, and they tried to protect their kids. Again, you're taking a live look at Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady, with President Joe Biden as they visit this memorial at Robb Elementary School, the site of that terrible tragedy. And of course, we know that tragedy started on the outside of the school.
Yes.
Shots were fired. We're, not far from where they're standing right now.
And I had not seen the large pictures of the children by the crosses. You know, a community member made those crosses this week with all the children's names and the teachers' names, and it's so moving to see their beautiful little faces there and the teachers there as well. And you could just see the hurt of the pain, and the president and Vice President Dr. Biden there as well, as they're just really taking a moment to honor each of those victims there. And
Go ahead.
I was just saying, we heard a crowd cheering when the president pulled up, and I just can't imagine, living there. There were houses across the street, and to walk outside your home every day and just seeing those faces there are just a reminder of, the beautiful lives that have been lost this week.
And this is another look at the growing memorial in downtown Uvalde. Again, it's going to be another hot day in South Texas, but it's not going to stop people from coming out to pay their respects to all of the lives cut way too short. So it's about 11:24 right now. We know the president will stay at this school for a little bit longer as he pays his respects to the 21 victims. And then they're going to head over to the church at noon for a mass. Of course, we know the president is Catholic, so he will be leaning on his faith as we all grieve through this tragedy. That mass is about an hour or so long, and then at 1:30, the president and First Lady will meet with families of the victims and survivors, and they'll be meeting with those families for about 3.5 hours before meeting with first responders, and then leaving Uvalde around 6 o'clock tonight, and then headed back to San Antonio, and then from there to Delaware.
And just hearing so many of the stories that are coming out from those families, hurting, and I know one parent expressed guilt because they were there for assembly that morning, celebrating the kids' accomplishments on the honor roll and attendance, and some of the kids were able to go home. They said, spend the rest of the day at school. However, of course, not anticipating what would happen later that afternoon. So some of the stories are heartbreaking, and curious, what words, President Biden has prepared for those families today.
Yeah, absolutely. We know he'll be leaning in on his own personal stories of loss and tragedy. What's it look like, guys, at the school right now? Can we go back to the school and take a look at that? No school. Okay, we don't have a shot of the school right now. Bear with us. There's some technical glitches as there are satellites and feeds throughout Uvalde. So let's do this then. Let's go back to Jeremy Baker. He's standing by live at the church as they get ready for the arrival of the president and first lady. That Sacred Heart Catholic Church, which is part of the Archdiocese of San Antonio. Obviously, it is well secured right now as we await the arrival of the president. Jeremy, what's it like out there right now?
Well, I'm seeing just off to the side streets around me some more people walking towards the church. As they probably know, they might have been watching the news, that the president is going to be making his way over here for that mass at noon here at the church that we expect is going to last about an hour before he moves on to talk to the families and the survivors of those 21 victims of this tragedy that happened on Tuesday. And you can see some people here. I'm sure some will try to get into the church. I'm not sure how many they'll be seated. I did see over the past 10 minutes or so, some people make their way into the church, possibly some parishioners. Not sure if they've been invited or if it's anybody from this community can go in there. But the street, last time you saw us live out here, roughly about 20 minutes ago, was pretty much packed with police cars from all sorts of different towns that we saw. Saw Kirk County, Crystal City, Odessa, Sweetwater, Schertz, Huntsville, several others too that I've never even heard of. But all those cars have now moved on, and can only imagine it's because you could see a lot of the other cameras that are up there. A lot of those are national media looking to get a shot of President Biden and his motorcade as he comes in. We just have to imagine that all of those police cars moved around to the other side of the church, likely where he is going to come in that way, along with First Lady Jill Biden. We also saw a lot of SWAT members, and they're also, of course, there to protect the president. But you can see there aren't a lot of people here lined up and down the streets looking. I would say there's probably about the same number of media as there are people looking around, waiting to get a picture of what happens here. And we do see some more police cars coming from down the road. Looks like some of them, actually a lot of them, are turning off. This is Grove Street, I believe, that we're on right now, and a lot of them are making a right. You can kind of see them turning, or at least now it looks like they're actually blocking the roadway. So it looks like they're not going to let anyone by this way. It appeared that the roadway had been blocked before, but they did let some cars through after those police cars left. But it looks like now they really are blocking the roadway with some of those police motorcycles as well. Down the other way, you're not seeing a whole lot of action at all, because what you're looking at is actually down towards Main Street and towards that makeshift memorial closer to Robb Elementary, where the tragedy went down on Tuesday. So that's where most of the people are. And I know Vanessa and Phil, you guys talked about people lining the roadways along the center portion of town. That's what you're seeing there. Here, it's more a few people here, a few people there. The majority, again, are media. We are seeing some people near the entrance of the church, but it looks like now that most of the people have already gone into the church, not seeing much of a line or people gathering outside of the church. I would assume they want people inside the church before the president gets here. They want the scene to be set quiet, ready for the president when the Mass begins at noon and again is expected to run until about 1 o'clock. You can just imagine what the town of Uvalde is thinking right now, what they're going through. Just a week ago, it was just regular old Uvalde, a town of 16,000 people. San Antonio, 1.5 million. News cars go around there all the time. People don't think about it. Here, I've been here twice in over 8.5 years. People would ask me everywhere I went, why is the news here? They know why the news is here right now.
Exactly.
After the national media leaves, and when the national media leaves, we're still going to be here. KENS 5 is still going to be here. San Antonio will still be here for Uvalde to show our love, to show support, to give you hugs, whatever you need to get you through this. Because for some it may last a few days, others it may last weeks, years. But you can see all those police motorcycles lining the roadway there as they get set for President Biden, who's expected to be here by about noon. Bill, Vanessa?
And Jeremy, a quick question for you. We know that the President, First Lady, they're meeting with the families of the victims and survivors at a different location around 1:30. Have you heard anything from out there? Who has actually been invited to the Mass today? Who is allowed inside the church? Because you said it was a very small building.
Yeah, it is a pretty small building. I can't imagine more than a couple hundred people at most could fit in there. So it's got to be standing room only inside there. We couldn't get in the church. They're only allowing media to get across the street from where our camera is right now. You can see some media out there right now. So I would say that's at least a good 100 or 200 feet away from the entrance. But we're not sure who was invited there, because when we got here, there was nobody outside that church except a few people from the town, and they didn't even know much. All they knew was they thought they knew that President Biden was going to be there. We were asking them, we're making sure it was the right place, because nobody was here. There was no security. But now, as you can see, plenty of security. At least a dozen or two police motorcycles are going by right now. We saw SWAT, police cars lining the roads. So the security is here, and it looks like everybody who is going into the church already has gone into the church. There's not one person that I can see now by the entrance. So from what I could tell, at best 200 people in that church. Not sure who was invited, if anyone was invited, or if it's only people from Uvalde.
Well, we do know that there were the group that met, some dignitaries that met President Biden and First Lady Biden at Garner Field, where Governor Greg Abbott, Cecilia Abbott, First Lady of Texas, Congressman Tony Gonzalez, whose area, District 23, is Uvalde is part of his area there, Uvalde County Judge Bill Mitchell, and then, of course, Uvalde Mayor Don McLaughlin as well.
Yeah, State Senator Roland Gutierrez was there too, and he actually had tweeted that they will be going, or he will be going to Mass with the president. So you assume a lot of those elected officials will be kind of, tagging along with the president, perhaps throughout the day. But again, in case you're just joining us, this is a live look outside Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Uvalde. We're getting ready for a noon Mass that President Joe Biden will be attending, as well as First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. Of course, the president open about his faith, being Catholic, born and raised, growing up Catholic. The church there, Sacred Heart, is part of the Archdiocese of San Antonio. So many people leaning on their faith right now. So many people grieving, so many people are still hurt. There's a lot of people angry. And of course, this is just the very beginning of that healing process, and church very important in that process.
And leaning on each other as well, Phil. I don't know if we can take another look downtown, outside the square in downtown. Many community members coming out there to join together. Uvalde strong. Many wearing maroon, the colors of the district out there. And if you're familiar with Uvalde, this is a gathering place. They have markets in the downtown square. Many people gathered on the weekends. There's stores around there, different shops. It's a gathering place, always known for so many different reasons. And now such a somber mood out there as people from the community are gathering to be together and join together and grieve together. And
let's go back out to the church. Jeremy, I know you were talking about this earlier, but like, for example, right across the street from you, there was a police vehicle. It was from the University of Texas at Austin. I mean, it goes to show the amount of resources that had to be brought in because the Uvalde County Sheriff's Office nor the police department can handle this type of situation when it comes to resources needed. And of course, we understand that all these law enforcement agencies have been helping out throughout the week, and they will continue to be here throughout the week. But Jeremy, you were talking about that, how you've seen law enforcement from all over, including towns you've never even heard of.
Yeah, and honestly, I have to wonder how many of those police are here to show support, how many are here because they need it. I mean, Uvalde is a town of only 16,000 people. I can't even imagine, that number is so small. I went to Penn State for college, and when I went, there were about 30,000 students there. So that's about half that size.
Wow.
So they're going to need all these police here. And yeah, towns I've never even heard of, but a lot that I have. Kerr County, Crystal City, Sweetwater, Huntsville, near Houston, Schertz, Odessa. From the Panhandle, West Texas, East Texas, and there's got to be some police from outside of Texas as well showing their support. Of course, state troopers, they're coming across the street right now. We're seeing a lot of vehicles with red and blue flashing lights. Seeing one coming across right now that says Joint Base San Antonio is here as well.
And
so they're showing their support, giving themselves their time for security.
And not only law enforcement, Jeremy, but we're hearing wonderful stories of, a crew from Whataburger in Del Rio went to Uvalde so they could keep the Whataburger open there, but those employees at the Uvalde Whataburger could go home and be with their families. The same with some Walmart employees from Del Rio did the same, went out to Uvalde so those families that worked at that Walmart could be at home with their families. Just an outpouring of support from surrounding communities as well as law enforcement. Even on Tuesday, I know that those sheriffs in the surrounding counties sent EMS right away. Counties that are very strapped for resources as well sent their only EMS crews out to Robb Elementary to support them out there. Actually, in this week too,
Yeah.
Congressman Gonzalez did post a picture, but we know Matthew Mcconaughey was there. He is from Uvalde, and he made a quiet visit there to support community members and just support them. I think it's so important for them to know that he is there in the community that he grew up in, to let them know that he is there for them.
Yeah, even Meghan Markle made a surprise visit. A lot of people were shocked by that, unannounced, just regular street clothes, and she was there. In case you're wondering where the president is, he's at the school right now. He's at Robb Elementary, paying his respect to all the lives lost, the 21 innocent lives lost. He's there with the First Lady. We're trying to establish a feed. There's a lot of moving parts, so we had a camera there. We're waiting to hopefully go back, but again, this stuff happens with live TV. There's a lot of moving parts. So right now, you're taking a live look at Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Uvalde, a small church. A church that surely has never seen anything like this before. The president will arrive there for Mass pretty much any moment because Mass is scheduled to start at noon.
And we are hearing, Phil, that the president is en route to Sacred Heart Catholic Church right now. He has left Robb Elementary. We saw just a few minutes ago that the President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were there at the growing memorial in front of Robb Elementary School, where the community has now posted, put pictures, large pictures of the 19 children and the 2 teachers that died on Tuesday, and also the crosses that were made by a community member to honor those victims there.
And you can see the president's schedule there. Again, as Vanessa just said, he's en route to Sacred Heart Catholic Church for that noon Mass. Then he will meet with families of victims and survivors at 1:30. That will last a little more than 3.5 hours or so. Obviously, you can understand why, because there's 21 lives that have been lost, and that's a lot of families to be able to console.
Yeah.
You have to imagine the president will be leaning on his own personal stories of tragedy and loss. We know the president lost his daughter at a very young age, as well as his first wife in a tragic car accident, and then he lost his late son, Beau Biden, to brain cancer. And so he's felt loss, not like this, but I mean, a terrible loss nonetheless. And he typically leans on his personal stories to help families who might be grieving. And then after he meets with those families of the victims and survivors, he will meet with first responders around 5:05. And then from there, he will head back to Garner Airfield in Uvalde, head on Marine One back to San Antonio, and from San Antonio head back to Delaware.
And we're going to take another look at the memorial growing in the downtown square there. And, you know, we were just talking with Jeremy about the law enforcement support across the state that has come to Uvalde, how the surrounding counties are sending employees from, you know, different restaurants so the Uvalde community can stay with to be home with their families. Also, we know from county officials that they have set up a family assistance center offering services for the victims and their families and the survivors of the tragedy, the teachers and the students. So many counties and surrounding areas and across the state have lent their services. We know Kendall County, right outside of San Antonio, Bexar County, Hidalgo County, down in the valley, Olive sent, Valverde County sent crime victim services to be with those victims, counseling services. We even know the officials in Mexico have sent a consulate here to work with families who live in Mexico that may want to attend some of the funerals here in Uvalde. So many people coming together really to support this community.
As well as donations. There's been a ton of donations coming in. We know HEB donated $500,000. Governor Greg Abbott mentioned an anonymous donor, I think, donated $175,000. There's no amount of money that will ease the pain or bring your child back, but at least it helps these families, because the last thing they need to worry about right now is, how am I going to pay for a funeral? How am I going to, you know, pay for this or that? And so it's incredible to see the amount of donations that have been flooding in for these families, and even people who can't donate money necessarily. There's been an outpouring of support for people donating blood.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah.
We do have if we want to cut to that really quick, if you're watching at home right now and you would like to help, there is a memorial fund set up. It's a Robb Elementary Memorial Fund. It's through the First State Bank of Uvalde. I know that you can donate at any First State Bank if there's one in your community, or you can contact them to make a donation. I know the Ecumenical Center here in San Antonio is also they're offering services to the community out there. They're trying to raise money to continue providing those. You see it right here, the Robb Elementary Memorial Fund, created through the First State Bank of Uvalde. You see how to donate right there. We have a link on our website if you'd like to donate online as well.
Yeah, all donations appreciated. Let's go back out live to Jeremy Baker, because we do understand the president should be arriving at Sacred Heart Catholic Church at any moment. Jeremy, what's going on right now?
Yeah, it looked like about a block down the road. This is Grove Street here. It's one of the main roads along Uvalde, just west of downtown. It looks like a motorcade just turned off to the side street. Looks like it might have been School Street or another street about down. But you can see across the street where a lot of the national media is parked, with their cameras facing the church. Looks like that's where the motorcade is likely going to come from as the president approaches the church, expected to start that mass at about noon. It's a little hard to see because we're about 100 to 200 feet away from the actual entrance of the church. I'm actually on top of our news van, the hood at least, trying to get a good vantage point here. But you can see a lot of police activity sitting there waiting for security to make sure everything goes smoothly, everything goes safely as the president's here. We saw plenty of people lined up outside, say about 15 to 30 minutes ago, but virtually nobody at the entrance now. I'm sure they've let everybody in by now. They want to make sure that the church is set, everyone's where they need to be, so when the president arrives, they can begin that mass, because like you've been talking about, Vanessa and Phil, from here, the president's day just continues. It's only the beginning of a very long day for the president. He'll be going to meet with the survivors, the families, first responders for 3.5 hours nearby here. And that's just got to be grueling. Obviously, it doesn't compare to what they're going through. What they're going through is absolutely horrific.
It was such a moving.
But the president's here to show his support.
Jeremy,
Go ahead, Vanessa.
we're just going to say it was such a moving scene a few minutes ago when the president and first lady were visiting the memorial at Robb Elementary and seeing those children's faces that they had created large pictures of them in front of the memorial and seeing their faces and those teachers. No doubt they must be very touched by seeing that. We don't know if the president's going to share any words with the media today, but we're hoping he will share some of that as well.
Of course, we know the president is Catholic and attends Mass regularly on Sunday, but this is not the Mass he anticipated attending just a week ago. I mean, no one saw this coming. And, this Mass for the president is going to be unlike any other Mass he has attended. You can imagine churches all across America, and in fact all across the world, are talking about what happened in Uvalde as people are trying to find ways to find some peace, to find some healing, to find some guidance on how do we move forward from this. So the president, obviously no stranger to attending Mass on a Sunday, but this is certainly not the Mass he anticipated a week ago today.
And Jeremy, we're seeing some movement over there. It looks like some more people are moving toward the church. What can you see from where you're standing?
From where I'm standing, and I'm a good almost 5 to 7 feet off the ground. So far, not a lot of movement from what I'm seeing, except for the police motorcycles that have just moved up the street at the intersection here of Fort Clark and Grove. Not sure what exactly they're doing there, because it did look like the motorcade, you might have a better vantage point, did turn off the street and is going to come up from the opposite side of the church. You can see that bulldozer that's right across the street acting as a barricade, a couple of them acting as barricades for the church parking lot in the street. Now you can see these motorcycles moving around a little bit, replacing themselves. It looks like they're doing their best to block off this intersection, so at this point, it's hard to tell where exactly the president's going to be coming from, unless you've got that view from above. I can only see exactly where I am, but I would say there's at least a good dozen to 15 motorcycles here. We've got the Joint Base San Antonio truck that's nearby as well, but definitely blocking off this intersection here. They don't want people getting through. Cars are not going through anymore from either direction. So the police are definitely anticipating the president's arrival within the next few minutes as he gets closer for that Mass that's at noon, expected to run until 1 o'clock before he goes to meet with the families, survivors, and first responders. Phil, Vanessa.
Thank you, Jeremy. We do know the church has been a busy place lately. Last night, around 7 o'clock, Sacred Heart Catholic Church on the outside of the church, they held a prayer vigil for all faiths. Everybody was welcome to come. There was music, there was prayer, several speakers. People showed up with flowers, candles, mementos. So, less than 24 hours ago, there already were a lot of people at Sacred Heart Catholic Church gathering to pray. All right, I believe we do have some video of this is it. This is the video I was talking about last night. This was outside Sacred Heart Catholic Church, the same church that the president is attending noon Mass today here that will start in about 12 minutes. But this is what it looked like last night outside Sacred Heart Catholic Church. People from all different faiths were welcomed. As we continue to grieve, you can see the emotion on people's faces. As we continue to grieve the 21 innocent lives cut way too short.
And this community is very close, very tight-knit community. We've talked to many families there who had a family member inside the school, and one of the victims maybe a family member, and so the hurt really just spreads across the entire community. The people grieving, we see it with everyone, and you can see it there in the downtown square, how people are just really joining together, being there for each other. We've seen our reporters have been out there as well, and just hugs, just really lending a hand to each other, and people coming from outside the community to do the same.
Yeah, you say outside the community, a lot of the people you see at this point, they're not all locals. I mean, we heard from a couple yesterday that traveled from Chicago. We heard from a couple that came from Colorado, from all over Texas, Houston. We've seen a lot of Houstonians come out to Uvalde. And so people really are coming from all over the United States or all over the world, really, to come pay their respects.
And that mass is to begin any moment now. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will attend the mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church near downtown Uvalde. That is he's set to arrive at noon to attend that mass. From where our cameras are right now, we have not confirmed if the president has arrived yet at the church. We have seen some movement with officers in the area who are starting to block off more roads, and we've seen some people moving toward the church, but we have not been able to confirm that yet. We're working on to see when that will start. Set to start around noon.
Yeah, let's get some video of the moment that President Joe Biden and Dr. Joe Biden arrived at that memorial at Robb Elementary. We'll listen in because as he arrived, you could hear the sound of the crowd there cheering the president's arrival. That memorial So there you go. That was that moment when the crowd was cheering the president's arrival, as well as the First Lady's arrival, as they showed up with a bouquet of flowers to that growing memorial outside Robb Elementary. Of course, we do know, and it's hard to think about that, the tragedy started really on the outside of that school, as there were a lot of shots fired outside the school. So, this is a memorial, but really the whole premises has kind of been a crime scene. As you know, Vanessa, you were one of the first ones on the scene there.
Yes, and so when I arrived, it was in the front of the school, and realized that the majority of activity was in the back of the school, where we later learned that 18-year-old entered the school right before he had wrecked his truck in a drainage ditch across the street from the school. But you can see the memorial has grown in front on the sign that says "Welcome to Robb Elementary School," and it's quite heartbreaking to see. Just how that is grown, the support for the Uvalde community. One of we just saw it right there, the Santa Fe community. There was a sign that says, we support you, we're with you, we stand behind you, Uvalde. In 2018, a gunman entered Santa Fe High School and killed 8 students and 2 teachers. That community sharing such a tragic memory, and there to support the Uvalde community today is so moving.
Yeah. A lot of this reminiscent of 2017, when the tragedy in Sutherland Springs happened, and then Vice President Mike Pence went to Sutherland Springs to help grieve with everybody in that small rural Texas town. And here we are, 2022, and the President of the United States is in this small Texas rural town to help grieve after another mass shooting. No president wants to ever have to deal with this because it's so heartbreaking, but it's the reality, and it's not the first mass shooting Joe Biden has had to endure. It was 10 years ago when he was vice president that Sandy Hook Elementary had that terrible tragedy where 20 kids were killed and 6 teachers as well. And here we are 10 years later. He's the commander-in-chief now, and now he's having to grieve families that lost 19 kids and 2 teachers. A lot of people hurt, a lot of people angry, wanting to know what's going to change. Will it ever change? Of course, a lot of people angry after the DPS director earlier in the week admitted that law enforcement at the scene did not make the right decision. So just a mixture of emotions as this town tries to find a way to heal.
And the pain felt throughout that community. We do know that, an officer with the Uvalde County Sheriff's Office lost a daughter in the shooting. And we know that one of the consolidated ISD officers lost his wife, one of the teachers in the shooting. many children lost, felt throughout the community. This is such a close-knit community. Many had family members or related to those families. So you could just see the hurt and the pain anywhere in town. You know, we've had many people stop us and just tell us thank you to be there. We will continue to support this community here at KENS 5 and share your stories. And as this community prepares to plan funerals in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and again, you can't even imagine what the families are going through. We have also seen an outpouring of support as far as donations go. That way families don't have to worry about how they're going to pay for a funeral. This community does not have a lot of money. That's the last thing you're going to worry about as a parent is how am I going to pay for this funeral? So it's been heartwarming to see the amount of support coming in from all over the world to help these families, because at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter how much money is donated, because that will never bring back their child. But to at least have the support of the entire world helps a little bit.
Yeah, and we were speaking to the other effects that, you know, once many people move out of town and weeks from now, the houses across from the elementary school, you know, that memorial is continuing to grow, and the community will continue to see that, you know, that it's just a very difficult reminder of the tragedy that happens there. And, you know, we did talk to county officials this week, and the district attorney, Christina Mitchell, told us that, you know, grieving and the hurting and the healing, there's no telling how long that will last, but that community is a family and they are strong and they will work to recover no matter how long it takes, but being together and supporting each other is what will get them through.
Of course, 21 lives cut way too soon. Mcconaughey Elrod was 10, Layla Salazar 11, Miranda Mathis 11, Nevea Bravo 10, Jose Flores Jr. was 10. Xavier Lopez was 10. Tess Mata was 10. Rogelio Torres was 10. Eliana Garcia was 9. Eliana Torres was 10. Anabel Rodriguez, 10. Jackie Cazares was just 9. Uzea Garcia passed way too soon. Jace Luevanos was 10. Maite Rodriguez was 10. Jaila Segura was 10. And we can't forget about the heroic teachers. Irma Garcia was 48. Eva Mireles was 44. Amarie Jo Garza was 10. Alexandria Rubio was 10. And Alethea Ramirez was 10.
So many beautiful lives lost, and just the bravery and the courage of those children and the teachers, the stories that we're hearing. Some of those students called 911 in the face of the evil that had entered their school that day, and then those teachers who died protecting those children in their care.
You expect to send your kids to school and they come home that day. You just can't imagine what these families are having to go through. You never thought it would happen again after Sandy Hook Elementary, and here we are. It's happened again at an elementary, but it's happened at other schools, sadly. A lot of people angry, and understandably so. You're taking a live look outside in downtown Uvalde at the town square there, the growing memorial, with people coming from all over the world, really, to pay their respects to those 21 lives cut way too short. If you're just joining us, the president has been in Uvalde for a little while now. He went to the elementary school, Robb Elementary, to pay his respects along with the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden. You have to imagine what's going through her mind, because she has dedicated her life to public education. And Vanessa, as you've said, because you used to be a teacher prior to becoming a journalist, that no educator, understandably so, ever expects to find yourself in that situation. Just absolutely tragic. Here in just about a minute or so, Mass should be starting at Sacred Heart Catholic Church there in Uvalde. That's where the President and First Lady are now. They'll be attending Mass. That Mass, you have to imagine, will last about an hour or so. The president, of course, often reflects on his Catholic faith. And you have to imagine he will also be relying on his stories of personal tragedy to help with these families. After Mass at noon, the President and First Lady will head over to meet with families of the victims as well as survivors. That will happen at 1:30. And then he'll be with the families of survivors and survivors as well or the victims' families and survivors for about 3.5 hours or so before he and the First Lady meet with first responders, and then they leave Uvalde around 6 o'clock and then head back to San Antonio, and then San Antonio they'll head to Delaware.
And we just saw a crowd gathering outside of that church. Our reporters have been out. Jeremy Baker at Troy Kless have been out there in Uvalde all day today, just talking about people, coming out with American flags. We heard the cheers from the community members at the school at Robb Elementary when President Biden and First Lady Biden arrived there. So it appears that this community is embracing and welcoming the president into their community in such tragic circumstances. We do know that Mass is set to begin any minute. Now it's noon, so it should be starting right now as we see that crowd gather closer to the church.
And as Jeremy Baker, who is on scene, has said, it's a small church, so you can only imagine under these circumstances it will be standing room only. Last night the church held a prayer vigil around 7 o'clock last night, open to everybody. Of course, anyone's welcome to attend. But it's a small church, and last Sunday they had Mass, never anticipating that a week later they'll have the President of the United States attending Mass because of a horrible tragedy that hit their community. And go ahead.
I know the sheriff, Uvalde County Sheriff told me on Tuesday before we had gathered really any details. He couldn't share anything. They were still very recent. But all he could tell me is our worst nightmare has just happened. And I know that's felt through many people in this community as they are grieving and mourning the loss of 13 beautiful children and 2 heroic teachers on this Sunday.
And the president, of course, attends Mass regularly on Sunday, but never in a million years did he think last Sunday that he would be attending Mass in small Uvalde, Texas, to help grieve with families who have suffered the unimaginable loss of losing a child, as well as those 2 teachers whose lives were also cut way too short. You can see people continuing to show up at the church. Presumably they will not be able to get inside at this point because it looks like it's just going to be packed. But you can see people showing up with flowers, coming to support this entire community that continues to suffer right now. Can we go back out to Jeremy? Is Jeremy standing by? Jeremy, we see people continuing to show up. Tell us about what it's like right now.
Yeah, we're seeing some people trying to get a little bit closer to the church. It doesn't look like more people are going inside the church. We do believe we saw the president's limousine pull up roughly about 10 minutes ago. And you do see some crowds of people a little bit closer to the church, mostly across the street, obviously just trying to get a little bit closer, most likely trying to get to see the president. But we do believe he's likely inside. Of course, Mass was supposed to begin at noon and run until 1, so that likely has begun by now. You can just imagine, what Uvalde is going through. This intersection, usually a quiet one here at 4 Clark and Grove, but it's lined with bulldozers as barricades, police cars from towns and cities all over Texas who've come out for security reasons to show their support, from Schertz, Huntsville, Austin, Odessa, the Panhandle, West Texas, East Texas. But most of the people you're seeing here are likely from this town, trying to get a little bit closer to the church that, again, it's a small one. It couldn't fit more than 200 to 300 people at most, and that would be standing room only, shoulder to shoulder. It's a small church in a small town of, roughly 16 to 17,000 people. Imagine San Antonio has 1.5 million. Here it's only 16,000. And earlier today, around 9 o'clock, we went to try to get something to eat at a small breakfast place. And you just have to wonder, everybody you run into, how were they affected? Do they know someone who lost their lives, or a family member of someone who lost their lives last Tuesday. And it breaks your heart really to be here,
Jeremy.
and just to know that once everybody leaves, once the national media leaves, it's gonna. You can't say it's gonna be back to the way it was. It'll never be that way for these people, but it's almost gonna feel empty in a way. But San Antonio is here for Uvalde, and of course Kensvide is.
Jeremy,
but, we're not going to forget, and we know you're going to go through this for years.
And Jeremy, when you
Go ahead, Vanessa.
when you first arrived, you said there was no one there, but it looks like there seems to be a crowd of community members or bystanders lining the streets. Tell us what you see out there.
Yeah, I know you were saying downtown, the center of town, people were lining the streets there. Now it looks like the crowd, or at least part of it, has moved here. You can see down the street here, this is Grove. Cars are now coming through. So I believe they were blocking the roads earlier because, of course, a lot of the police weren't going to know exactly what direction the president was going to take arriving to the church for security reasons. That's obvious. But now they know he's here. They know which direction he was going. We're not sure which way he's going to leave. You'd assume the same way, but the opposite direction. But now cars and trucks are going through here without a problem, just a little slowly. But we are seeing more people lining the street, especially in front of the church. Nobody else is going into the church. Mass likely has started by now, as it was supposed to by noon. But we are seeing people standing directly across from the entrance to the church, lining the streets there, possibly to get a look of the president, say hello to the president, to tell the president thank you for being here. We know why he's here. He's here to show support. And this is the second time in 2 weeks that he has had to do this. And it's one thing seeing faces in pictures on television, seeing interviews that are done on television that we do, in person. But, President Biden went to the makeshift memorial, went to the school, talked to people that lost loved ones. It hits you in a different way. And to have to do that twice in 2 weeks just must be unbearable.
Yeah.
But of course nothing compares to the loss of those who lost loved ones. And now we're seeing people crossing the street toward the church. Not sure if they're going to get in, but it looks like police are now letting people at least get closer to the church, just across from the street where they just started to gather about 5 minutes or so ago. Some police are across there as well, lined up in their motorcycles, but it looks like they are getting closer to the entrance of that church. They can't hold, I would think, more than 200 to 300 people shoulder to shoulder, standing room only. This is definitely an active area right now. It was not the case at 7 this morning when we got here. It is a far different scene, and I'm sure it will be later on today as well. Phil, Vanessa?
Absolutely, Jeremy. And as we take a live look outside Sacred Heart Catholic Church as that noon mass is underway and the president and first lady are inside, a major development has come out. We do now know that the Justice Department will be reviewing the shooting and the response. Here's what the Justice Department said, quote, at the request of Uvalde Mayor Don McLaughlin, the U.S. Department of Justice will conduct a critical incident review of law enforcement response to the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas on May 24th. The goal of the review is to provide an independent account of law enforcement actions and responses that day and to identify lessons learned and best practices to help first responders prepare for and respond to active shooter events. The review will be conducted with the department's Office of Community-Oriented Policing. As with prior Justice Department after action reviews of mass shootings and other critical incidents, this assessment will be fair, transparent, and independent. The Justice Department will publish a report with its findings at the conclusion of its review. So again, a major development there. We now know the Justice Department will be doing an independent review of the shooting and specifically how law enforcement responded to the shooting. And when that is done, it will be published to the public.
Congressman Joaquin Castro also called for some kind of investigation as well last week. He also added that he was not confident that DPS can conduct a fair investigation because there were troopers, allegedly state troopers there with the 19 officers, in question that we learned about, according to DPS on Friday.
Yeah, way too many questions left unanswered, and of course, everyone hopes to get those questions answered. Let's do this now. Let's go back out to Troy Kless. He's live outside Robb Elementary School. That was the first place that President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden went to visit. Troy, what can you tell us? What's the scene like out there right now?
Well, the scene it's very calm, but also we see several people that have been walking to and from the school to pay their respects. We're kind of on the, I would say, I guess the south side of the school. If you can see, there are still law enforcement officers that are walking over there behind us, and we've seen, people again kind of walking around. It's, been a really busy sight, as you can imagine, with all of the media and people that have just descended onto this area. We're kind of blocked off at this point. This is what we can see right now, and just driving around, you can see several people again, bringing flowers, trying to pay their respects to the victims. And even outside of one home, I saw a sign that said that our schools should not be a war zone, and just people really torn up about this shooting here at Robb Elementary School. As you mentioned it before, Phil, there's still several questions that are lingering about the response to the shooting, while everyone is still trying to grieve the loss of loved ones or people that they know right now. So again, this is where we're at for right now, and we're just again taking in and seeing everything that we can at this point. So again, we're over near the corner of Cargyle and Old Carrizo Street. Just down the road, you can see the flagpole outside the school, right in the area where the memorial is at this point. So that's just what we're seeing right now from our vantage point. It's just a lot of people walking around and again trying to find a way that they can pay their respects or visit the school as well. Phil?
And Troy, earlier the president and First Lady, when they walked up to the memorial, and we heard cheers in the background. We couldn't see exactly how many people were cheering. But have you seen large crowds out there? Have you seen more people, just out there to support the president and First Lady visiting their town today?
Yeah, so far we have seen quite a few people just making their way back and forth. I mean, you could have heard those cheers over the microphones earlier today when the president and the First Lady arrived here, taking their time to process and look at the memorial and the location of where this tragedy took place. So again, we've talked about this, we reported this even last night, that it's been mixed reviews of the president coming here to town, but from the most part what we're seeing is people being thankful and grateful that the president and the First Lady are here to support this community under the worst of circumstances right now. Vanessa?
All right, thank you, Troy. Well, we know the President Biden and First Lady are in a mass service right now. After that, they will be visiting with the families of the victims and survivors of the shooting on Tuesday.
Yeah, they'll be meeting after Mass. Mass is scheduled for about an hour or so. At 1:30, the President and First Lady will be meeting with families of the victims as well as survivors. That's going to be obviously closed to the public, understandably so. We're happy to obviously bring you images since the president arrived, his visit to the memorial and him headed to Mass. But understandably, we won't be able to have access to any of the moments when the president is meeting with the families of the victims and survivors. After that, around 5 o'clock, the president and First Lady will be meeting with first responders, and then they will leave Uvalde and head back to San Antonio, and from San Antonio to Delaware. So what we will do, I mean, we've got our crews, as you know, there throughout Uvalde. We've got Jeremy Baker at Sacred Heart Catholic Church, where the President and First Lady are now. We've got Troy Class outside of Robb Elementary, and we have more crews headed that way today. So we will continue to bring you the very latest from Uvalde. We'll have much more on the President's visit to Uvalde, and we'll continue to come into coverage as needed. Of course, we'll also have much more online.
And for now, we want to just say that our hearts and our prayers are with the Uvalde community today.